Good day, everyone. We are happy to welcome you to a new episode of UME Startup Experience project, which aims to bring together the startup community within the ecosystem of leading experts. Today we have a new guest, the CEO of company KNESS, Sergii Shakalov. Good day, Sergei.
Greetings to everyone in the audience.
We are very happy to meet you today and looking forward to hear interesting stories from you, and we hope for an insightful conversation. Our startup participants are also eager to ask their questions during the Q&A session in the second part of the meeting. For now, we will start with the prepared questions for the speaker. We will ask the questions and you can provide detailed responses. So, are you ready to begin? Great, wonderful. So, the first question. How did the idea of creating your business came about?
It's an interesting story. The thing is, we didn't start as a classic startup, as it's often seen today. It was 15 years ago. We had a circle of engineer friends. And we got our first project in a rather unique way. We heard that a large client, we work in the energy sector, specifically in electricity, had issues with connection power to their new facility in Vinnytsia. We gathered all the necessary information and offered the company a solution that saved them a lot of money. They believed in us. There was some kind of magic. They believed in us, and we successfully completed the project. It was a big and ambitious project. Now we do similar projects by the dozens, but back then it was our first one. That's how it all started. It was a project-based approach. And once we finished, we gathered to decide whether to continue. We made the decision that we were now a business. And from that point, we started growing. Over the next 15 years, we expanded to the scale we are today.
That's a great story. So it all started from your first project.
Yes. At that time, we simply got the project. So when we talk about initial investments, it was essentially pocket money that we used to rent an office, buy some basic equipment, and hire the specialists needed to complete the project.
So you created the project, developed it, and everything went successfully. After that, you started operating as a company. So, how many people worked with you at that time? And was it a large team or just a few like-minded individuals?
In the beginning, the company was founded by 3 people. So it all started with just 3 of us. Back then, we did everything ourselves, whatever could be done, by hand, foot and so on. There were no limits on working hours. On average, especially towards the final stages, we worked about 16 or 17 hours a day without weekends. We had a small team at first, and it took about a year to complete our first project. It was a large, ambitious project. By the end of it, the project team consisted of several dozen people. Today, our team is over 1,000 people.
Wow, over 1,000. That's a serious scale. We know that even some large companies don't always have such a big staff. Often a company can be a leader in its field but not have much specialists because processes are highly automated and can run without a large-scale team. This is very interesting. Could you tell us why did you choose the energy sector specifically?
Firstly, because we understood it well. We knew how Ukrainians' energy system works. In fact, any energy system in the world operates according to the same fundamental laws of physics: amperes, ohms, and Kirchhoff's laws, and not the laws of Ukraine, Brazil, or any other country. These processes are formed the same way in every country. Since we understood this, and I still believe and will probably always believe, that our team has one of the best expertises in the global electric power market and the energy sector in general. This has become our core. It's the foundation of all our other businesses. It's also important to explain how the KNESS group is structured today. We position ourselves as a vertically integrated holding that operates based on a deep understanding of how the energy sector works. We have built a vertically integrated company that spans everything from creating business models to developing energy projects, like solar and wind generation, distribution systems, storage systems, and more. The next stage involves the construction and physical creation of these facilities, followed by their maintenance and the trading of electricity. We even buy and sell electricity mostly from the projects we've developed. This is why we have thousands of people on the team, with more than half of them being engineers and
So,
managers.
this global scale started with defining your mission and the right direction for your activities, along with identifying your industry. And now you can say that your range of services is quite broad and your operations are well developed. So, can you tell us in which countries your business is currently operating? We know you're not only working in Ukraine.
Yes, we operate not only in Ukraine. We have a full-fledged office in Latvia, which currently covers all the Baltic countries as well in Poland. Right now, Poland covers just the Polish region, but we plan to expand our operations to other European countries.
That's a great idea. It's fantastic that a Ukrainian company can expand into new international markets. Thank you for your answer. Let's continue with the next question. What goals are you setting for your business over the next 5 years?
We have our own development strategy, which we adapted last year. This strategy requires us to transform the business, and we are currently undergoing this transformation. The organizational structure of the company needs to change. Right now, our headquarters are in Ukraine, in Vinnytsia, with branches in other countries. According to our strategy, we need to become more international with full-fledged divisions and companies in the regions where we operate. This transformation is ongoing and not yet complete. It will probably take another year. In line with this strategy, not much changing for us, even considering the current situation in Ukraine, which remains our largest and primary market. We fully understand what's happening here and the implications, but our main mission, as you mentioned, is the transformation of energy systems. We recognize that traditional systems based on large coal or nuclear plants need to evolve. There's a global trend, and we are part of it, towards a more disturbed energy system. This means having many different power sources located in various regions, all of which should be environmentally friendly. This leads to a more democratic energy system, where more people have access to fair prices and can directly influence the final product's cost. So, in the next 5 years, we will focus on transforming Ukraine's energy sector and participating in similar transformations in other markets, without delving too much into big numbers.
Thank you very much for your response. Could you tell us a bit more about how you plan to transform the energy system and what solutions are you offering? I'm sure the participants would find this very interesting.
Look, the war, how to put it, has accelerated the transformational process.
Absolutely.
For instance, the energy blocks and generations that were coal-based, particularly coal generation, were supposed to be phased out in a few years naturally. However, they are now essentially destroyed, which accelerates the process, because something has to be built in their place. And this something must meet certain parameters. It has to be environmentally friendly, carbon neutral, to use a popular term. Additionally, it must be distributed, meaning lower capacity per unit, but spread across as many locations as possible. In this case, it's simply to avoid being hit by a missile. But beyond that, there are many other benefits to distributed generation. For one, it's much closer to the consumer, which allows for significant cost saving in the future. Why do I say that everyone can participate in price formation? Because it's now absolutely possible for everyone to install solar panels on their house and generate some electricity for their own needs. This makes your electricity effectively cost zero, apart from equipment payback. But that's not the point. The point is you're generating power for yourself. This can be done not only by homeowners, but also by business owners, municipal companies, anyone, anywhere. You could also add wind generation, for example, with businesses able to install a few wind turbines on their premises to power their operations and reduce depends on state or semi-state monopolies. This is the transformation we are talking about. It's accelerated because if there's no energy available, you are forced to create your own. That's why this transformation is speeding up. That's the general idea, without diving too deep into specific terms.
Yes, of course, we understand. And honestly, this concept is very timely, especially given the contact attacks and unstable energy situation we face now. It's great to know that we have Ukrainian entrepreneurs who can help address this issue. Naturally, it takes time, fundings, and social adaptation, as you mentioned, but in a few years we'll start seeing the results with more alternative energy sources being installed, more efficient consumption, and a more eco-friendly purchasing. And I believe ecology is also one of the important factors in your company work, right?
Yes, it's one of our core values. We don't invest in anything that's not carbon neutral or that causes pollution. Everything we do is focused on the ecological aspect. For example, our company has its own ESG strategy, which we strictly follow, and perhaps you've heard about it. In our office, we only use electricity for heating.
That's great. I agree with this approach because sustainable development principles are very popular now and have been implemented by many companies for quite some time, especially abroad. It's great to see that Ukrainian businesses are also transforming, adopting these principles, and using alternative energy sources for their needs. It's truly fantastic.
There's another benefit. We have reached the point where it's now cheaper than non-ecological energy generation.
That's another big advantage and probably one of the most significant. Even so, you may spend a certain amount of money on setting up and ensuring the right conditions for the systems, the return of investment is much higher, and the benefits far outweigh those of traditional energy methods we used to.
Whenever you are in the midst of a transformation, it creates a tremendous opportunity to develop new business models and evolve existing ones. That's one of the reasons we are so interested in working in this sector. Apart from fooling all over major ambitions, there are also good business potential here. But trust me, it doesn't happen overnight.
Of course, nothing happens immediately, so that's perfectly understandable. Now we reach the point where we can move on to the second stage of our interview, which involves questions from startups. Our participants can now ask questions which they submitted in our channel or leave them in the chat. We will answer them as we go. We already gathered a few. So here's a question from Dmitro. What are the trends in solar energy development in Ukraine and globally?
Look, there's a clear understanding of the future of energy systems worldwide. If in the past energy systems were primarily based on large-scale generation from nuclear, coal or gas plants, This is now changing. The future is in the mix of solar and wind energy for basic generation. First of all, it's already much cheaper to build large-scale solar and wind farms than to construct new coal or nuclear plants. And it's significantly more environmentally friendly. So the development of large solar and wind power plants is our future. Of course, wind and solar alone don't work. There need to be a large infrastructure of additional elements, such as energy storage systems and other generation methods, that can provide better balance. Storage systems can vary, but the core energy mix will consist of solar and wind power plants in any part of the world where the climate and the land allow for it. And there are more than enough suitable locations globally.
There is a question that perhaps goes back to the early days of your company. We know that the equipment, solar panels, wind turbines, is quite expensive. How did you transition to the stage when you began producing and installing them? Where did you find the funds, the money? It was investments from your initial projects, or how did you expand your activities?
Let's dive a bit into the history. We started as a company that essentially provided consulting services, meaning we were selling our expertise. Could that have brought in significant revenue? No, but as we moved into design and construction, it provided us more resources. Over the last 15 years, I'd say no less than 90% of our earnings were reinvested back into the company. In other words, we live for our company, and that's important to understand. Our first solar projects appeared only in 2012. Before that, we were involved in power distribution systems, building substations, and all kinds of design work related to power transmission systems. In 2012, we had the opportunity to work with solar power generation and solar power plants. It wasn't until 2016 that we decided solar energy would be our main focus, where we should concentrate all our efforts. The real impact of that decision came only in 2018. In 2018, we even opened a solar panel production facility in Vinnytsia. Unfortunately, we had to close it in 2020, for various reasons, primarily due to the economic impracticality of manufacturing solar panels in Ukraine. But this didn't stop us from continuing to develop our main direction. Now we understand that we've built quite a lot of solar projects over time. There are many solar power plants in Ukraine, and they continue to develop through a slightly different aspect. We are now shifting to our focus to wind energy, recognizing that this sector is still underdeveloped in Ukraine. To give you some numbers, if we currently have about 1 gigawatt of operational power in Ukraine, the country needs around 20 gigawatts. That's roughly the market potential for the wind sector. And that doesn't even cover storage systems, among other things. But all of this development is based on our core understanding of how the future energy system should work. It's from this understanding that we shape all our business models, and we have many of them. Even in the challenging times, when working in Ukraine is extremely difficult, despite my optimism, there are plenty of problems.
Yes, unfortunately.
But the direction remains unchanged. We haven't shifted our focus.
That's great. You set a course and I stick to it. Could you share with us? Earlier, we often saw solar or wind installation primarily in the south part of our country, but now the situation is quite tense. In which regions is there currently the highest concentration of alternative energy sources?
It's still concentrated in the south of Ukraine, with the Odessa region being the most active, less so in Mykolaiv and even less in Kherson, due to the risks. There are high-risk and low-risk areas in terms of attacks. As you know, any large-scale infrastructure project usually involves financing from banks, international financial institutions, or partners. All these parties need to access risks, so currently the regions that are considered safer or more energy attractive, with more sun and wind, are the ones that continue to develop. However, as modeling shows, in today's conditions there are no regions without potential. Additionally, both wind turbines and solar panels have become much cheaper. There are many manufacturers, high competition, and now building a solar power plant is about 5 times cheaper than it was 6 or 7 years ago.
That's great, as it makes the process more accessible, which is attractive because it allows for significant cost savings.
Exactly. This is what drives the progress forward. And it also provides some energy security, even during power outages.
That's another advantage, of course. Do you have any forecast for which regions, aside from the south ones, might see the most development of alternative energy sources? How about the central regions? You mentioned that there are no unsuitable areas, but which one seems more promising?
Believe me, right now there isn't a single region in Ukraine where renewable energy projects aren't being developed. The key factor is that it has to be in a relatively safe zone, free from the threat of attacks. There are places where investments aren't being made, and that's understandable because no one wants their equipment to be destroyed during construction. So there's an additional layer of segregation based on safety.
Thank you. We have another question from Anastasia. It goes like this. Do you collaborate with other companies in the field of renewable energy? Do you have any partners, and how does this collaboration take place?
Look, we have what's called a golden client. This term defines the type of client we need to ensure our business grows as quickly as possible and receives the necessary resources. One important note is that we are a group of businesses, each with its own commercial activities, but the golden client supports the entire vertical.
Підтримує всю вертикаль. Відповідно, це саме і є ті самі фінансові інституції, які нам потрібні для реалізації наших проєктів.
This client is essentially the financial institutions that we need to execute our projects. They are our main focus when it comes to finding investors for our projects in various forms and proportions. Regarding collaboration with other companies and partners, it's important to understand that Ukraine's energy sector is a relatively small community.
Взагалі, енергетика України – це така досить невелика ком'юніті,
That constantly interacts companies and helps each other. So it's a bit of a mix.
Це така собі історія. Ми можемо...
I have many competitors who are also my friends.
Скажу так, в мене дуже багато конкурентів, які є моїми друзями.
Yes, that's a common situation. It often happens that competitors also collaborate, and this happens in many industries.
Я дуже люблю конкуренцію, тому що конкуренція...
I really like competition because it keeps you on your toes. You're always in the race since everyone wants to be better at something. On the other hand, I dislike monopolies. I believe monopolies are fundamentally harmful.
Вважаю, що монополія – це базове зло.
Yes, I agree with you because competitive environments breed innovation, new solutions, and the ways to solve problems. So, could you perhaps give some advice to our startups on how to thrive in a competitive environment and how to adapt products when you face competition?
І взагалі, як адаптувати свій продукт на ринку, коли саме знаходишся в цьому конкурентному середовищі?
To be honest, I am not a big fan of giving advice, because I am not always sure I am right. I am someone who often has doubts about many things. Though there are areas where I am 100% confident, still I doubt a lot. That said, understanding the competitive landscape is always a process. It's not something static where you make an assessment once and then form your strategy based on that. Competitors evolve. Everyone wants to improve their product and make it more competitive. So being an entrepreneur is about constantly seeking information and working with it systematically. You need to gather information from all available sources, analyze it, and assess the actions of your competitors. You can't win in competition if you operate in a vacuum.
Of course, I completely agree. Thank you for your answer to that question. We have a similar question from our startups who are interested in how to attract investments for renewable energy projects. Do you have any advice or perhaps interesting insights that could help them?
This question can be broken down into a few parts. If you're talking about funding for personal needs, there are millions of different programs, government, quasi-government, and various funds. Government banks are currently offering special loan products for both individuals and companies. However, if we are talking about investing in a large project, for instance, an energy project, which typically costs anywhere from 10 million to 100, 150 million or more. That's a different story. If you have a project and want to attract a partner, you need to understand what that partner wants. Typically, what your partner wants and what you want are not the same.
Тому що, як правило, те, що хоче ваш партнер, і те, що хочете ви, воно не завжди одне і те саме.
You have to find common ground. If you don't have a partner yet, you need to identify who on the market is interested, and most importantly, what they want. Then you adjust your project accordingly. That's how we prepare our projects, by understanding what the potential partner wants. And it's not always about profitability. It's about the quality of the project. It has to generate income over a clear time frame, not within 2 or 3 days, but steadily over these years, generating revenue. The project must be as transparent as possible and marketable. There's a concept called bankable. I'm sure many have heard the term. It means that banks should understand the project and be able to provide financing. There's a whole range of criteria we set for ourselves. And we know that fulfilling these criteria will be enough to bring financial partners on board.
Є достатнім для того, щоб він зайшов грошима в ці проекти.
Yes, I think this information will be valuable for startups or new entrepreneurs. If they want to grow in this industry, these insights are important, especially in the early stages.
Your product needs to be interesting to your partners, but first, define whom you want to attract. What are their interests? Whether it's a company, a person, or anyone else, you need to adapt your project to meet their requirements. If you don't know these requirements, you're just working based on your intuition, and there's no guarantee that it will be effective.
Yes, I completely agree with that. We have another question related to the development of modern technologies and trends. One of the major trends in recent years has been artificial intelligence. Do you use AI in your work, for instance, as an assistant or helper? We know AI can significantly contribute to the energy sector, helping with electricity flow analysis, proper distribution, and big data analysis. Are you using it? And if not, do you plan to?
We started using our first neural network back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. We developed this product in-house. It helped us forecast how much energy a wind or solar power plant will generate based on weather predictions.
Oh, that's great.
After that, we continue to develop these products. Are we using artificial intelligence? Since the introduction of GPT-3, we've had our own bot, called KNESS bot, which incorporates AI. We use it as an assistant, and for the text analysis because we deal with a lot of information, and it often helps. Many of the things that are now popular in the market we've been using for quite some time. We are also developing our own products based on AI. And there is one very interesting project we plan to complete in the next 2 years, which will be based on neural networks and AI. This is our own initiative. Personally, I believe that eventually AI will become like a company employee. Maybe not just one, but several working alongside people. They will need to be properly integrated and managed.
I completely agree with you because AI can greatly simplify routine tasks. It can quickly fix things, help with writing, and take over some repetitive work, allowing employees to focus on more serious and important tasks.
більш серйозних і важливих справ.
AI can also serve as an assistant by analyzing and predicting, given that its memory doesn't lose details like humans do. It's great that we can use AI for such important purposes.
We expect that AI will eventually move beyond just analyzing models and evolve into something more generative and interesting. For us, it's important not just to replace minor, routine tasks, but to use AI for functions currently performed by humans.
Якісь дуже мілкі рутинні історії, а що ми могли використовувати функції, які зараз виконують люди, щоб їх
We envision an AI not just as artificial intelligence, but as a non-human entity with the necessary skills and efficiency. That's the direction we are working towards.
З відповідними навиками і з відповідною ефективністю. Ми вбачаємо саме такий розвиток, і тому ми з цим працюємо.
That's great, and I agree that AI can bring tremendous value to both the global objectives and daily operations of a company. It's wonderful that companies can adapt AI for their needs and use it to achieve their goals. It's a huge advantage. We have another interesting question. It concerns your team. Of course, any company relies heavily on its employees and they play a critical role. Can you tell us whether it's difficult to find specialists and engineers these days? What about recruiting process in your company?
Це проблема. Це дійсно проблема.
It's definitely a problem, and quite a pressing one, but it was somewhat predictable. So we had time to prepare. At the end of last year, we forecasted that we would face this challenge one way or another. In response, our company HR department has been actively working with various groups of young specialists, including those from universities and technical colleges. We focus on internal skill development, maintain talent pools, and offering various programs to improve qualifications.
Це кадрові резерви, там великий спектр, скажімо.
The HR department is constantly expanding these efforts because the company operates in a competitive market.
Відповідно, тому що компанія постійно має знаходитися в ринкових умовах, а ринок
The HR market in particular is one of the toughest right now. There's a significant shortage of specialists, which makes it very difficult to navigate. Simply put, there aren't enough specialists.
Yes, unfortunately, that's the reality. We've heard the same from many partners and speakers. It's very difficult to find qualified staff. It's great that your company is focusing on collaborating with young specialists, fresh graduates, or students from universities and other institutions, providing them with opportunities for growth. By developing these partnerships, you can build a dedicated department that nurtures future specialists, which is fantastic.
It's not just difficult to find qualified specialists. It's even hard to find unqualified ones. Trust me, that's even more of a challenge.
Yes, I completely understand. It seems particularly challenging for technical specialties. Looking at my peers or younger guys, many of them are choosing to study more economic or business-related fields, while technical specialties haven't been as popular. I'm not sure, maybe it was a trend?
I can't say for sure. Also, we have been working with universities and technical institutes for quite some time. We've noticed a gap when these faculties couldn't attract enough students. Though now this changed, but it takes a long time to train energy engineers. And energy engineers can be trained in 2 months. It takes 4 or 5 years to acquire just the basics. Then they still need to gain practical knowledge. Energy work isn't just plugging in a socket. It requires deep engineer skills and a solid foundation from classical physics to quantum mechanics. There's a lot of knowledge involved, and it's not enough to simply know it. You have to apply it. So training an engineer is a complex process, but we have an internal training program within our team.
Wow, that's great.
To help those employees who want to improve their qualifications.
That's great, really great. I love this initiative where companies are willing to provide the necessary knowledge and train employees for the specific tasks and skills required in their company. It's a fantastic opportunity, and it can really help shape a future career.
Because if a business doesn't do that, it will die quite soon.
Yes, that can happen. If you're only looking for fully trained specialists, it doesn't always work out, and sometimes new hires may not meet your expectations. So yes, it's a real situation.
The issue goes even deeper. When you hire a fully trained specialist, they may not always fit your company's culture. Company culture is a fundamental factor that leads the team to result and possibly success. So even if you hire a top-notch specialist, if they don't align with your culture, values, or traits, you will lose out. You won't achieve anything in such a scenario, and it will be inefficient. That's why also it's longer, more expensive and harder. It's sometimes better to grow specialists within the team, especially if the company is evolving from a small team into a large, structured company.
Yes, I agree with you. We have a related question on this topic. What qualities should a specialist have to get a job in your company? Of course, it's hard to predict, but maybe there is a general set of qualities you look for.
Well, there are basic, simple things, but in the end, it all depends on your willingness to grow. If you have the desire to develop, you can gain all the necessary qualities over time. And of course, if your culture fit aligns with the team or can be adapted to it. That's really important. Essentially, adaptation and the willingness to achieve results together to become part of the team. No single person achieves result alone. It's always the team that achieves success. If a person has a desire to become part of the team, to share the values and goals, then I don't see any big problems for anyone.
Absolutely, that's how it works.
Without gender segregation. We don't have that here.
Yes, that's wonderful. And we have a rather interesting question. How did your company name came about?
It's a scary story.
We'd love to hear it if you're willing to share.
Sure. It's not a big secret, but it's a bit of a long story. I'll try to keep it short. The first company we created was called Podilsky Energy Consulting. That was our first name. But then around 2011, a representative from a European company visited us and tried to pronounce the name, but he couldn't. That got us thinking. Our ambitions were always bigger than just Vinnytsia or Ukraine.
Амбіції компанії, вони завжди були ширші, ніж Вінниця або Україна. Там завжди хотілося чогось більше, чогось масштабнішого.
We always aimed for something larger than more international. We realized we needed a name that would work internationally.
Скажімо, бути більш international. Так, відповідно...
I don't remember exactly what year it was, maybe the mid-2010s.
Тоді ще не було ChatGPT.
Back then, there was no ChatGPT to ask for advice, so we hired a marketing team to help us come up with a brand name. They suggested about 15 options, and we settled on this one.
Саме на цій назві, їх там було десь 15.
The key concept behind the name, which we honestly haven't fully developed yet,
Однак ключовий момент, який ми так і, чесно кажучи, не розвинули до кінця. На чому базувалася назва? Якщо ви володієте англійською,
is based on that suffix ness. For example, if you don't take the word bright, meaning vivid, and add ness to it, you get brightness.
Ви отримуєте яркість. Тобто суфікс ness
Which turns it into a noun. The suffix makes it something that already exists, and that's the essence of the name.
There is a saying that the name you choose shapes your destiny. There is some irony in that, too.
Якось пливе.
Thank you for sharing the story. It seems like a simple thing, but every name has its own history. So for any startups out of there that hasn't yet figured out what name to choose, it's best to think about how it might expand to the foreign markets right from the start.
That's important, but what's even more important is not just what you name yourself, but how your partners and the market associate your company with that name. The real question is what kind of association your brand name triggers in the market. That's the most important thing, because in my opinion, there are only two things that sell in the world today. Only two things that have added value: innovation and reputation. Nothing else holds value or can hold value. If your company aligns with these parameters, you can parameterize it however you see fit. But those two aspects, innovation and reputation, are what will ultimately bring long-term success to your company.
Great. Thank you for that little insight. It was really interesting to hear. Let's move on to the key question at this stage, and it sounds like this. What technologies can help to store the energy accumulated from the sun or wind in the nearest future, and how do you think they will develop?
We mostly believe in chemical energy storage. There are several ways to store energy, like in gases, mechanical energy, and even thermal storage. But we still believe in chemical processes. We think that various chemical processes in battery cells are the right method for energy storage. According to our concept and the global one as well, energy storage systems are divided into two parts. One part is short-term storage and the other is long-term storage.
накопичення. Якщо з короткостроковим накопиченням вже
When it comes to short-term storage, we are already seeing that lithium technologies and everything surrounding lithium are at the forefront. Plus, there are sodium-based, magnesium-based technologies, and many other developments. But in general, let's focus on this block of batteries inside cells. We consider this short-term storage optimistically lasting up to 4 hours. But for the energy system to be fully balanced, we believe storage needs to last for 10 or 20 hours. So the current technologies aren't suitable for long-term storage. I think the most promising development in next 5-10 years will be the introduction of chemical long-term energy storage solutions. We are working on one such technology in our R&D center. And we hope that in 2 or 3 years, let's say within this time frame, we will be able to bring this product to market.
That's great. Thank you for sharing your future plans. It's really exciting that you're developing this field which isn't yet fully established and that you're creating the necessary technologies for your work. That's really fantastic.
Yes, it's expensive, it's risky, but it's exciting.
I completely agree with you, and it can bring huge benefits. That's probably the greatest value.
It's one of our core values. We do business that brings value. Otherwise, it's not interesting. It doesn't align with the company's values or cultural roots.
Thank you for your answers. It seems like the startups have received answers to all the questions. So now we are moving to the key part of our session, the rapid-fire questions. I will ask you short questions and you can give short answers. But if something interests us, we may discuss it more in details. The first question is, which thought leader inspires you?
There is such a person, Warren Buffett. He inspires me with one thing. He is 93 years old and he continues to lead a very powerful, systematic and successful business. It shows that there are no limits. The only limits are the ones we set for ourselves. That's the story.
Great, thank you. Next question. What's your best way to relax? Active or passive rest?
Активний. Я люблю спортзал, скажімо так.
I like the gym. I believe nothing clears the mind like active physical exercise. Any kind.
Активні фізичні навантаження. Будь-які.
Yes, that's cool. Sometimes even a simple run can help you to reset, and during that time, you stop thinking about everything and return with fresh energy to a new challenges.
It depends more on your trainer. If you have a tough trainer, you won't have any thoughts left at all. And you will come to work the next day completely cleared of any doubts.
That's true, I've heard that before. Okay, moving on to the next question. If you could have a superpower, what would it be? Controlling time or reading minds? Or maybe something else?
I'd like to always make the right decision. Let's call that a superpower.
That's great. That would definitely be a superpower. Unfortunately, it's not always possible.
Every entrepreneur, every business person always has to make decisions. That's their job, especially as a leader, CEO, president, or owner. They must make decisions, and often we make decisions when there's clearly not enough information. But the decision still needs to be made, and you have to take responsibility. You can only hope that the decision you made is the right one.
Так, так. Але
Yes,
це
some
теж
people
можна
say that
вважати
luck
якоюсь,
plays a role in it.
можливо, деякі кажуть, що на це впливає удача.
We ask
Тому
this
що
question
ми
to
задаємо
any
це
speakers,
питання
and some
постійно
rely on
до
luck.
спікерів, і вони деякі покладаються на удачу, кажуть, що от приймати важливі рішення. Це
Називає це чуйка.
I call it gut instinct.
Yes.
Чомусь ви прийняли таке рішення. І далі ви вже
For some reason, you make a
інтуїція,
decision,
чуйка,
and
не
then
знаю,
it's intuition,
свічку
gut
ставте,
feeling. I don't know.
моліться, будь-що. Але
Light a
все ж
candle,
питання в кінці
pray,
кінців,
whatever
це
you
ви
need to do.
приймаєте рішення. І вся відповідальність
But
лежить тільки
ultimately,
на вас. Вам
you
нема,
make the decision.
вам нема з ким цю
And the
відповідальність
responsibility
поділити,
is entirely on you.
бо ви є
There is no one to share that responsibility with, because you're the leader,
приймати такі,
the key
що
person in the
ставите
company.
на,
Sometimes you have to make decisions that put a significant part of your business on the line,
дуже суттєву
but those
частину
decisions
вашого бізнесу.
must be made.
Але рішення приходиться приймати.
так.
Yes, yes,
Від цього
exactly.
нікуди не дінешся.
Okay, here is the
Тоді
next
у нас
question.
є наступне
Is there a
питання.
book that
Книга,
changed your
яка
life?
змінила
Do you have a
ваше
such
життя?
book?
Чи є взагалі така книга?
Мені досить важко, да, от виділити якусь окрему
It's quite hard for me to single out one book. I read a lot in my life.
Я досить багато в своєму житті прочитав.
I'd say
Я можу
there's a
сказати,
collection
що,
from Harvard
мабуть,
Business Review.
От є така підбірка Harvard Business Review. От,
These short articles and publications have helped me a lot in terms of business transformation and personal transformation.
Мені дуже багато що допомогло з точки зору трансформації бізнесу, трансформації мене особисто.
If I had to name one resource, it would be that collection. There are also larger books I read after finding references in Harvard Business Review, and those books allowed me to look at things differently.
Я прочитав Harvard Business Review, і після цього я побачив посилання і прочитав вже там повністю книжку, яка в кінці кінців там дійсно по-іншому дозволяє подивитися на речі.
Звісно, це не обов'язково завжди.
Of course, it's not always preferring books. Some people prefer scientific articles or media publications. That's important too, because they provide insights and help boost confidence and knowledge in useful areas. So startups, take note on this resource and read it. It's definitely come in handy in the future.
На майбутнє вам також точно знадобиться.
And we'll continue. When it comes to study, which type of education do you prefer? Formal education or self-education?
Я б не хотів би ставити тут
I wouldn't want to give a preference between the two.
Що дає формальна освіта?
What does formal education offer? Formal education gives you networking, especially at the MBA level or higher levels of business or technological education.
Бізнес-освіти, або навіть технічної освіти і так далі. Ви живете і працюєте в якомусь
With a group of people, and this group stays with you, possibly for life, if you conduct yourself properly.
То цей колектив з вами надовго, може навіть на все життя. Мої партнери – це мої друзі.
My partners are my university friends, just to point that out. So I actively support formal education.
Досить, скажімо, активно виступаю за формальну освіту.
Maybe there are new trends that don't require this, but still I am in favor of it.
Давненько, скажімо, можливо, зараз якісь нові тренди, які цього не вимагають, але не менше з тим. Хоча з точки зору якогось профільного знання, якогось там вузького
However, when it
знання,
comes to specific
я би,
niche knowledge, I might lean toward a specialized
міг би
program.
схилитися до якоїсь персоніфікованої програми, яку можна, скажімо, взяти
Something
на
you
лабі
can take
або
in a lab
ще,
or
або,
elsewhere.
І просто прочитати, якщо вам
And
потрібно
just read up on the
спеціалізоване
specialized knowledge you
знання.
need.
Але
But
там,
when
де
it comes to
більше,
something broader,
ширше,
something on a larger scale, I still recommend classical education. For now, that's my view.
на даний
What
час,
the
як
future
деталі
holds,
я не
I
можу
can't say.
Звісно, звісно, звісно.
Of course, I agree with you. Each type of education has its own advantages, as you mentioned. Formal education is also transforming, incorporating online courses, podcasts, and more, so learning isn't confined to the classroom anymore. It's important to mix both types of educations to get the most benefit.
За допомогою альтернативних джерел. Тому насправді це є важливим. Старатися міксувати обидва цих види для того, щоб отримати для себе максимальну користь.
Thank you for your answer. And we move on to the next question. What is the main trend in your industry? Let's summarize briefly.
The transformation of the energy system is a major trend for the coming decades. With the emergence of new technologies, some we don't even know yet, and new business models we can't currently imagine. It's like flying into space with only a general idea of what's out there.
Це як летіти в космос, де ви тільки маєте загальне розуміння, як воно, що воно там.
That's where we are now, at the beginning but in the active phase of this transformation. And this applies not just to Ukraine, but to the whole world. Everything is on track.
Все нормально.
Круто.
Great. Moving on. What is the number one value for your team? Or if there are several, feel free to mention them.
Пригадуєте, я сказав про репутацію.
Remember when I mentioned reputation? The foundation of a company's reputation is simple. Keep your word. That's something that's very expensive. It's often much cheaper to back out of a commitment or forget something. But the main value of our company is reputation, and it's built on the phrase, keep your word. Does it always work out? No, not always, unfortunately. Let's be realistic, but I am glad that these instances are rare and known, and they aren't hidden when they fail to keep our word.
Sometimes it happens due to certain circumstances, and we can say it's not always a critical situation. Everyone can make mistakes, and that's not a bad thing because they push you toward to new developments.
It all depends on how you handle it and what your partners and clients know about it. If your clients understand this value, they trust you. And business is built on trust, especially in the B2B sector, where we operate. If people trust you, you can succeed. If they don't, that lack of trust spreads like a cancerous tumor, and it spreads very quickly throughout the entire sector. Once again, energy is a small community, large but still quite small. Information spreads very, very quickly. So, reputation is crucial, and how your clients, partners, and even competitors see you matters. If they are copying you, that's a good sign.
It means you're ahead.
Well, let's move.
I agree. We have a few more questions. Moving on to the next one. What advice would you give yourself at the beginning of your career?
Learn English.
A perfect piece of advice. We recommend it to everyone.
Всім рекомендуємо.
Це must have, це те, без чого ви взагалі не
It's a must-have.
нічого більше, ніж
Without it, you won't build anything beyond a local business in Vinnytsia, or at most in Ukraine. Even then, I'm not sure, because you won't be able to communicate with the people you need to.
З тими, з ким вам потрібно спілкуватися. Тобто, якщо ви хочете дійсно
So if you really want a large-scale business, learn English. I didn't realize this immediately, and I spent quite a lot of time developing this skill to a sufficient level. But it would have been better if I had done it earlier. The business might have grown faster than it did.
Тоді б, можливо, бізнес би розвивався більш швидко, ніж він розвивається і розвивався.
Thank you for that answer. Here is the next question. What habit would you recommend every entrepreneur to develop?
I would say I am an advocate of proper, effective communication. Your success depends on how well you conduct negotiations.
Як ви правильно і гарно ведете переговори.
It's not as simple as it seems, but I would recommend that every entrepreneur learn how to negotiate well. Or, if you don't want to learn, at least do something that allows you to successfully negotiate with anyone. It's important, a very important skill.
Якщо не хочете вчитися, то зробіть щось, щоб вам вдалося успішно вести переговори з будь-ким. З будь-яким рівнем. Це важливий скіл, це дуже важливий скіл.
Yes, exactly. Because any company leader is essentially the face of the company, and one of his key responsibilities is negotiation. As you said, negotiations can take many forms: business, partnership, or even internal team discussions. When someone has a high level of this skill, it naturally inspires trust, and people consider their decision is right.
Вважаєш її рішення передовими, показовими і ті, які варто дотримуватись і наслідувати.
I completely agree with you.
I'd say it's not only a crucial trait for entrepreneurs, but also for key team members.
Важливої частини команди. Підприємець або лідер,
The entrepreneur, the leader, or the CEO doesn't handle all the negotiations. The team does. If they work on this skill and know how to do it well, fewer problems will reach the CEO. It's also a question of efficiency. But yes, negotiation is a very important skill.
And now we have a key question. What advice would you give to startups in one word or one sentence?
Стартап.
A startup is the hardest part of building a business. It's the very beginning. So my advice would be, never ever give up. It may sound cliché, but you will always face losses. You're not just making money. You're constantly losing it. But you're not really losing it. You're buying your experience. Have we lost a lot while gaining our experience? Yes, quite a lot. Trust me, we've paid millions of dollars for that experience. Sometimes those losses are very painful. Sometimes you feel like giving up. And you have to find some extra internal resource to keep going on. So, the one who wins is one who gives up last.
Thank you for such a great piece of advice. With that, we'll wrap things up. Sergii, thank you so much for sharing your interesting stories, trends in your industry, and the history of your company's growth, as well as for giving valuable advice to our entrepreneurs. And to all the participants, thank you for joining us today and submitting your questions. We invite you to join us for the next episodes of the UME Up Startup Experience program. There is still a lot of exciting content ahead. Subscribe to our channels, leave likes, comments under the video, and share with your friends. We will be very happy to see you in the next episodes. Thank you so much again, Sergii, and have a great day!